Thank you very much for the invitation and for the organization of this very nice workshop. And so the title is not perfectly up to date, and I will more be on the side of continuous symmetry. So I will talk about like not one, but actually 4 models, which will be spin systems on the lattice. And the first one of these 4 models is the XY model, which was briefly mentioned, or which was mentioned actually by Tyler yesterday. And then I will talk about like 3 other cousins, like models which are like closely related to this XY model, which are like the Villain model, and 2 others in the second category, which are what I call, and I will define like integer valued height functions, and there will be 2 models. And so the plan of the talk will be as follows. So I have like continuous symmetry, and I also have disorder. And I will do what like most people like to do when we study spin system in the presence of disorder. We'll consider like, so most of the time we consider 1 spin system. Here we will consider 4 spin systems. I will present some of their properties. So especially I will be working only in 2 dimensions, like this entire talk is only in 2 dimensions. And I will talk about a phase transition that exists for these 4 models in 2 dimensions, which is called the BKT phase transition, which was mentioned yesterday. And so that's for the XY model, and it will also apply for its like cousin, the Villain model. And for the 2 other like models in the category integer valued height functions, there is another phase transition, which is called the localization-delocalization phase transition. And proving the existence of this phase transition has required a lot of work, and were like important breakthrough in the field. And me, what I want to do is answer a natural question. We'll add some disorder to the model, and see if, when we add the disorder, this addition of disorder, does it affect the phase transition? Especially, the question will be, if we add some disorder to the model, and there are many ways to add disorder to a model, and I will tell you how I do it. Do I kill the phase transition? Does it disappear? Or does it survive the addition of a disorder? And I didn't say it, but please, I will try to keep things quite light on the technical level, but please don't hesitate to interrupt if you have any question. So the first part of the talk will be like, okay, what are these models? Like the first one you may know. And if you work in this field, like it's not going to be a surprise which models I'm going to consider. Like they are very well known, and there are many relations and connections between these models, which have been like extensively studied. I will try to spend some time presenting like what are these phase transitions. And then in the first part of the talk, where are the new results, I will add some disorder, and the disorder, essentially, roughly speaking, what I will say is I will put this model not on Z2 by 2-dimensional graph, but on a supercritical and the infinite cluster of the supercritical Bernoulli percolation, which I will define. We just discussed quickly what is Bernoulli percolation. And I will tell you what is the result. So when we consider this model not on Z2 but on the infinite cluster, what happens? And I will present the tool, which is nice, which is a correlation inequality, which has a nice story on which I may say a word, which is called Wells inequality. And so either you know this inequality, otherwise you may not have heard of the name Wells. And I will mention like who is this person and what is he doing in this field. Okay, so we will start with our 4 spin systems. And so the first one, so we are continuous symmetry. So the first one is the XY model. And I will like talk about 3 cousins, the Villain model, one that I call the integer valued Gaussian field, and one which I call the XY height functions. So I will say it. My first spin systems are valued in the circle, so that will be XY model, which was mentioned yesterday. And the second is the Villain model. And my 2 other spin systems, like number 3 and number 4, that will be valued in Z. And it's the integer valued Gaussian free field. So when we talked a bit about the Gaussian free field, and we relied like a constraint to this model. And the second one, the name is from essentially me, but I'm not the one who introduced this model, but I will call it the XY height function. Okay, so we'll start with the definition. We start, like as Tyler mentioned yesterday, we have a spin space and we consider the circle. So yesterday what was considered was the sphere. Here we'll only consider the circle, which will make things much easier in some aspects. And what I will consider, like on the circle, are configurations, which are functions defined from a big box. So capital L will be the size of my box in 2 dimensions. It will always be in 2 dimensions. And you have to think of L being very, very large. Like L is equal to 10 to the 10 to the 10 or something like that. And the configuration will be a function defined on my box and valued in the circle. And what I will do is I will put a probability distribution on these functions, which was the one mentioned yesterday, which will go as follows. So sigma is the configuration, and the probability distribution that I put is I will start by putting like d sigma x is the uniform measure on the circle. And so for each x, you could consider the measure product over x in the point of the box d sigma x. So if you sample according to this measure, it's just each spin is uniform independent of each other. And I'm going to put a weight on this measure, which will take the following form, like exponential. I will put a parameter beta, which is my inverse temperature, and I will sum over all the pair of neighbors, nearest neighbors, now, of the scalar product, sigma x, scalar, sigma y. Roughly speaking, what you have to keep in mind is that what this measure wants to do, like the configuration sigma, which are the most likely to be selected, are the ones which maximize this quantity. And in order to maximize this quantity, I want the configuration to be aligned, so all the spin to point in the same directions. So it's a measure which favors configuration, and you put a weight here. If beta is very large, you strongly favor alignment, and if beta is very small, and if you take beta equals 0, like all this term disappears, then you're just independent. And for later, because this will play role, so this is the partition function, it's a constant that makes this measure a probability distribution. And just to set a notation, because I will use it, I will use this bracket notation with capital L. L, think about it as something being very large, to be the expectation with respect to my xy measure. So what you have to keep in mind for the rest of the talk, I will consider always 2 regimes, either beta very large, like beta like 100 or 1000, and when you sample according to your measure for beta very large, the spins will tend to be aligned, so you will see something like that. And if you take beta very small, they will, like what they will look like, or what is a good approximation, is to say, I choose a value here of my rho uniformly on the circle, and all of them are independent of each other. Okay, so far so good. So that was for my first model. And now I want to introduce my second model, which is the Villain model. And what I can do, since I'm working with functions valued in the circle, the function valued in the circle is a periodic function. I can see it like that. And to study periodic functions, we have a very good tool, which is Fourier analysis, with Fourier expansions and Fourier coefficients. So what I can say, and what I will do from now on in this talk, is to set, okay, for any sigma x it's in the circle, I will write it exponential I theta of x, which is in the circle, with theta of x, my angle, in 0 to pi. And so I can rewrite my measure. Instead of putting d sigma, I will like parameterize it using d theta, and I will write it exactly the same. So I have the product measure d sigma x, it becomes like the product d theta x, where d theta is the Lebesgue measure, but now on 0 to pi. And the sigma x scalar product sigma y is the scalar product of my 2 spins, which is the cosine of the difference of the angles. So the sigma x scalar product sigma y becomes cos theta x minus theta y. Okay, fair enough. The definition is completely equivalent, so no problem. And so if you want to study this model, like an idea is to say, okay, I will try to, I have periodic functions everywhere, you have the cosine, so I will try to use Fourier analysis. And so a function that plays a role here is the function exponential beta cos theta. So you may say, okay, it's a smooth function, let's expand it in Fourier. And so you have Fourier coefficients, you can sum exponential ik theta, ik of beta, ik of beta. And you can ask, what is this coefficient? Well, it's nice, but it's maybe not the nicest, so it's what we call in the literature a modified Bessel function. And well, you can say lots of things about its properties. Here is the formula with an infinite sum. So it's still quite long, but why not? And so there is another model if I want to study, if I want to go there, like to study this model using Fourier, I will say, okay, these coefficients are nice, but I could find like nicer coefficients. And something that we like in probability are Gaussian functions, like exponential minus 1 over beta k squared. So instead of putting like this ik of beta, which is natural for me because I want to consider this function, I will just define a function which I call v beta of theta, which has the Fourier coefficients which are Gaussians and decay nicely. And when you want to study with Fourier analysis, sometimes you're very happy to have these Gaussian coefficients rather than having the modified Bessel functions. And I will put here the beta on the denominator, and that's to ensure that my model satisfies the same properties as my XY model, meaning that when beta is very large, I want my model to favor alignment. And when beta is very small, I want my spin to be roughly independent. And based on that, so that's the heat kernel, I can define the Villain model, where I replace the exponential of beta as the sum of the cosine by the product over all the pair xy of v beta theta x minus theta. Okay, that gives me like a new spin system that we call the Villain model. And so I will just write the definition of the function. So that's sum over k is z. Because this will be useful later. Beta cos theta z. So modified basis function. And you can say the definition of these coefficients are the one which ensures that this identity. And it behaves like so. The Villain model has the same, essentially, as far as we know, the same properties as the XY model. Yeah?
Is there some values of k or beta where the coefficients kind of become close to each other?
So
if you... exponential?
Sorry?
Are the coefficients, the I and the exponential, close to each other in some regime of beta and k?
I would say no. They don't have the same behavior as k goes to infinity. Like as k goes to infinity, I think this one has like a factorial in it, so it's k log k, like exponential minus k log k, whereas this one decay like a square. So not exactly. I don't know if it answers the question.
But if you plot the two functions, then it would be hard to tell the difference.
Yeah, if you plug the two functions, it will be hard to tell the difference. If you do what?
Well, if you try to plot the
There's no sense in which beta is an approximation to the other one. That's what you're telling me.
No, I think there is a sense.
So
There is a sense.
Well, I think if you look at the difference between these two functions, they will be very close for beta large or something like that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm
Yes. Yes, so for beta very large, so wait, this I can tell you. For beta equals 0, they all go to 1. And for beta very large, this one converges to the Dirac on the 2 pi times an integer. Like when you divide the exponential beta cos theta, and you divide by the integral between 0 and 2 pi of exponential beta cos theta, so you will normalize. This measure is going to put all its mass on 2 pi times an integer. And this one will also do the same.
So they get closer.
Yes. So for beta very large, they like all these measure favor alignments, which means that I must have theta x minus theta y with 2 pi times an integer, and that's the same behavior for the two. So the asymptotic behavior of beta goes to 0 and beta goes to infinity are the same.
And it also looks quadratic, right, in theta and beta. I mean, it looks Gaussian, both. If you expand,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So if you take, they look Gaussian. If you do like an expansion around theta equals 0, you have the same type of like Gaussian expansion. That's fine for the definition of these two models. And so now, so that's my first two models. And what you have to know is that, as far as we know, they have the same type of behavior on a qualitative level. And the question is, can you prove it? For which model can you prove it, and what can you prove? And sometimes it's easier to work with one or with the other. And usually, when you use Fourier, it's easier to work with this way, basically. So now, okay, I will introduce my second pair of models, which are going to be, there will be a duality between these ones and these ones. And it will go as follows. So my spin space now will be the set of integers, so z. And I will consider the function phi defined for my box lambda L, where L is very large, valued in Z. And here, I will impose a boundary condition. I did not do it for my previous two models, but for this one I will do. And I will impose what we call the Dirichlet boundary condition, so phi is equal to 0 on the boundary of the box. And once you're there, you can define like the integer value Gaussian free field, which is the Gaussian free field condition to take integer values. So phi is a function valued in Z, and the probability to sample phi is exponential minus, this time I put the 1 over beta as the denominator again, phi of x minus phi of y squared. So this one, as you can see, like the function here, it's the same as the function here. And so what people realize is that there is a duality between these two models. Meaning that, roughly speaking, because this has to be made precise and it's not easy at all, if you understand one of the models, you can like transfer some properties to the second model. And the second one, you may have guessed what I'm going to do. I'm going to define the xy height function, where I'm going to replace this exponential of minus phi x minus phi y squared, so this term, by this one, and then it becomes something whose definition is at first not so nice, but which is a model which can be very nicely studied. I take the product of, I fix beta, and I put the modified baseline function at value phi of x minus phi of y. And here there will be a duality this way. So we may want to study these models independently. What would be nice were if like the xy model, whose definition is fairly natural, were dual to the integer valued Gaussian free field. But that's not the case, so the xy model is dual to like the xy height function, and the villain model is dual to the integer valued Gaussian free field. Okay. And so what do they do, these models? So what do you have in mind? So what they also favor, like, so that's a function. And the function which is the most likely to be selected is a function which minimizes this sum, which is a function phi equals 0. And then I can play on the parameter beta. So if I take beta very small, so this coefficient 1 over beta is very large, and I really want to have like this function is equal to 0, so my function will become more and more flat. And if I take beta very small, it's going to be the opposite, and I'm going to be more and more fluctuating. So what I will need for this model are the variants, which I will call variance GGFF, and variance ZXY. And so that's a simulation. For beta very small, what we should see is like basically a C of 0 with some spikes here and there. And the spikes will typically jump of size 1, you can see in the simulation. And sometimes, but even more rarely, you will see a jump of size 2, and sometimes, but even more rarely, you will see a jump of size 3.
So yes. You put 0 at the boundary? Or?
You put 0 at the boundary, yeah. Yes, 0 at the boundary. And if you don't put 0 at the boundary, you don't see that. But I will always put 0 at the boundary. And if you reduce beta, then you become more and more fluctuative, and you start something that looks like the simulation of a discrete GFF. And you fluctuate much more, like here you go to 100. And you start to like fluctuate more. Okay. Is this clear for the definition of these models? So what do I want to study? So I will want to show the existence of a phase transition. So when I vary the parameter beta, I want to see a modification of the qualitative properties of my model. And for that, I will need an observable to catch these qualitative properties. And so what I will do, the observable for the xy model was the one mentioned yesterday. It's a two-point function, which I write here with angles. So I take small l and capital L. So capital L is the size of my box, take it like extremely large. You can even send it to infinity, I will say a word later. And small l to be like a number which is large. And you look at the cosine between the angle at 0 at the center of your box and the angle in the direction E1. Take any other direction, but E1 will be good. L times E1. And you can look at this expectation for the xy model or for the villain model. You have to take capital L larger than small l, but you can take it very, very large. And you will want to know, the question we'll ask is how does it decay as a function of small l, essentially. And on the other side, like the observable is easier to introduce, I will want to look at the variance of the GFF in the box of size L, and I will look at the variance at the center of the box at 0. And so we have one properties, and which is the reason why I put the definition of the beta either at the numerator or at the denominator. I want all these functions, and all the functions that I will mention in this talk will have the same property. They will all be increasing in beta. So when I increase the value of beta, This increases the cosine, which is the correlation between the 2 points, and this also increases the variance of the height at 0. And you can do much more general versions of this statement, but I will be happy with that. And a remark, we can also prove that these 4 functions are increasing in L. So that will be interesting because it proves that these 2 variances are non-negative numbers, so either they go to infinity as L goes to infinity, or they remain bounded, which will be a question that we will ask. And for the 2 observations above, like the 2 observables above, so it's a cosine of an angle, so it's smaller than 1, and it's increasing in L, so when I say take the limit L goes to infinity, it converges to a number defined in infinite volume. And if you want, in all the talk, if the parameter capital L, which is the size of my system, is unknown, you can just take the limit L goes to infinity, and all the functions that I will write with this cosine are going to converge as L goes to infinity to a limiting number, which is a supremum over all the capital L in M of these functions. Okay, so that was for the definition of these models. The second is now I want to present a bit what are the phase transitions in 2 dimensions, so it was mentioned a bit yesterday. And then we will do like the novel part of this work, we'll add some disorder to the models and see how they react to the addition of the disorder. And so the phase transitions, they go in 2 parts. So I have like the XY and Villain models, they will have the same phase transition. And the integer value function Mifflin and the XY height functions, they will have the same phase transition also. So the first one is known as the KT or BKT phase transition. And the second one, I call it the localization-delocalization phase transition, but it has more than one name. Okay, so the question is as follows. Fix 2 integers, like small l and capital L. Capital L like extremely large, you can even send it to infinity. With small l smaller than capital L. A beta strictly positive, and you consider these 2 2-point functions, so the correlation between the spin at 0 and the spin at L E1. And you say, what is the behavior as capital L and small l tend to infinity? And what is proved, known, and required quite a lot of work is that there is a phase transition which is captured by this observable. So you can take either the XY or the Villain model. When you take beta very large, and we are always in 2 dimensions, these functions decays like a polynomial in L. And when you reduce the value of beta, and you take beta very small, and this function starts to decay exponentially faster. And the proof of this result, so the first proof was Froelich and Spencer in 1981, and there has been lots of progress, new proofs, notably by people in this room today. So Pete Lamers is here, and Martinis is also here. Oh, and if we draw simulations, so it's nice that Internet can simulate it. So here, what did I do? So each pixel is a point of ZD, and for each angle you put a color which depends on where you are, which angle you take. So you have a color code, so blue tells you that you go to the right, red tells you that you go up, yellow tells you that you go down. And what you see is that at high temperature, what it looks like is just you sample the color uniformly among your set of colors, and they are all independent between each other, and you are in the regime where you have exponential decay of the correlation. And if you reduce the temperature, you start to see something different. You still have like lots of colors in your picture, but you have groups of colors. So here you're green, means that all the spins tends to be a bit aligned in the green direction. Here you're red, here you're blue. And that is indicative of this like BKT phase transition. And if I do a simulation if I zoom out of my simulations, I see that when beta is small, you have like something very disordered. And when beta is large, you have something where you see that the spin tend to group together. So that was the phase transition for the first 2 models between like polynomial decay of the correlation or exponential decay of the correlation. And I can ask, do I see a phase transition for these other 2 models? And the answer is yes. And here it will be slightly simpler to estimate. So I will just look at the variance of the Gaussian free field integer value of the XY height function at the center of my box as a function of L. I know that it is an increasing function, and the question that I will ask is what happens when L goes to infinity? And the result is like when beta is very large, it grows logarithmically in L, and when beta is very small, it remains bounded as a function of L. And so this has led to like numerous contributions on like these questions and also related questions, because you can ask many questions on this model by many people, and quite a few of them are actually in this room today. So it's still, as of today, an active topic. And if we do a simulation, that's the simulation from earlier. Here we are in the regime where the variance is bounded. What you should see when you do a simulation is like 0 and a few spikes here and there. And here is the regime where the variance grows logarithmically. So you see something that's much more delocalized. Okay.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
On the picture on the left, is it just an artifact of this particular simulation, or the spikes seem to all have the same size?
That's an artifact of this simulation. Or that's because I choose the size of my box and the beta, so that I see a few spikes, but not too many.
Typically they have various sizes, but
they have various sizes.
There's these big patches where there's nothing happening.
But the size 2 is much more unlikely than the size 1. So you will see like the huge majority of your spikes will be 1, and some of them will be 2. But in this picture, with the size of my domain, it's so rare to have like size 2 that the simulation just doesn't show it. But you will have like higher things. Okay. And so next question now, what I want to do is to, so that was like a brief account of the literature and what we know about this model. And what I want to do is to introduce some disorder to my model and try to see how does my model react to the addition of a disorder. And so for that I will like talk a bit about Bernoulli percolation, and I will present an inequality which is called Wells inequality. So everything that's related to the disorder will be in blue. My color like blue is for the disorder, and red beta is for the inverse temperature. So I will consider a very simple like percolation model, the Bernoulli band percolation, and the percolation configuration is a functions omega defined on the edges. So x and y will be neighbors on the lattice, and which takes the value 0 or 1, where 0 means that the edge is closed, and 1 means that the edge is open. So here will be the idea. Once I have omega xy, I will put it in my model as follows. So I will fix omega. So you know like for each edge whether you're equal to 0 or 1. And you consider like the Gibbs measure mu xy in your Gibbs box of size L, beta and omega. And you will introduce the parameter omega xy here just in front of the cosine. Which means that when omega is equal to 1, then nothing happens. And when omega is equal to 0, then you remove the cos theta x minus theta y construct. This is exactly equivalent to putting my xy model on the graph where I've removed the edges which are closed. And so that gives me a definition, take L very large. I can do the same with the Villain model, and it's doing exactly the same. So I incorporate the omega by putting omega xy times beta here. When omega is equal to 0, I have the function v of 0, which is equal to 1, and so the product here is going to disappear. Okay, so given the percolation configuration, I can define these two measures. Similarly, what I can do is, so I will do some version of this, but for my two height functions model. So I will take beta and 0 infinity. I take my measure, and this time I will put 1 over omega xy, phi of x minus phi of y squared. So be careful here, what I am not doing is saying that I put the integer value Gaussian free field on the graph where I'm removing the edges. Why am I not doing that? Essentially because the question that I want to look at is almost trivial if I do it by just putting the integer value GFF on this graph where I remove the edges. What am I doing is, when omega xy is equal to 0, I divide by 0, and so my convention is 0 divided by 0 is equal to 0. So I must have phi of x is equal to phi of y. So for the height function, what I do, here, if this is x and this is y, then I add a constraint phi of x has to be equal to phi of y. Okay? So it means like two neighbors of a closed edge have to take the same values. And what does this do? This tends to like put my functions closer to 0. Like imagine that you have the function omega is equal to 0 everywhere, so you have like all the edges are closed, then the only possible options, like it means that all the phi of x and phi of y are equal, so you just have phi equals 0 because you put 0 boundary condition. And so here, by closing edges here, like my functions, like will tend to fluctuate less. It will go closer to 0. I can do the same with the xy type function, and it's exactly the same that is happening. So here you have to figure out what is the function like I of 0, but what I'm doing is like if x and y is a closed edge, then phi of x must be equal to phi of y, and this does exactly the same thing. This reduces the fluctuations. We will see an inequality later that reflects this fact. Okay, so now I need like two notations for my disordered model. So I will consider the variance once again, and I will get the omega to refer to these measures, and omega is fixed for me. Then here is the question. Select a probability P in 0, 1. Assume that the omega are IID Bernoulli of probability P. The probability that your edge is in your lattice is equal to 1, and the probability that you remove it is equal to 1 minus P. Is equal to P, and the probability that the edge is closed is 1 minus P. Sample omega according to this measure. Fix beta. What is the behavior of these four functions? Reasonable question. And the question that I will want to ask is, if I take beta very large, do I see polynomial decay or do I see exponential decay? And if I take beta very small, do I see polynomial decay or exponential decay? So here it's still a bit, I will further simplify the question, it's still a bit annoying because I have a realization of omega. So what I will consider is that I will average over the disorder. So I will call expectation P, the expectation with respect to the omega, which are IID of probability P. So now these four functions, so this one only depends on the parameter L, beta, and P, and I want to see if you give me P and you give me a beta, how does it behave as L goes to infinity? And this one, I fix L extremely large, small l quite large. I have fixed P and I fix beta, and I say, okay, send small l to infinity. Does it decay polynomially fast or exponentially fast? So that's an annealed observable. And the answer may depend on the value of P and the value of beta. There are quite a few cases which can be easily handled, which I will discuss briefly. And there is one case, which is basically like P is large and beta is large, where it's interesting, and I will show you like what is happening. Okay, so first observation, I would like to have some tools to like try to navigate through all these questions. So I have 4 models. I'd be happy to know a bit what is happening. And the tool that is useful in probability are some monotonicity properties. And one of them is as follows. So we saw that these functions, like the cosine of the difference and the variance of phi of 0, were increasing functions of beta earlier. So that was an example of the Gini correlation inequality. And they are also increasing in the percolation configuration omega. What does this mean? It means that if you consider a percolation with an edge closed, and you open the edge, so you switch the value of an omega from 0 to 1, then you increase these 4 values. And so, is there a question? No, it's clear. Okay. So these are some and a very simple consequence from that is that if I consider like any percolation configuration with the omega, it is smaller than the same function with omega is equal to 1 everywhere, which is the observable that I had before, the cosine of the difference of the angle for the model without disorder. And that's true for the xy model, that's true for the Villain model, and that's true for the 2 height functions. Easy consequence from that, if I take beta very small, what did I say? The model is very hot, so it was the picture on the left for the xy model, and the picture on the right for and the picture on the left also for these 2. The cosine decays exponentially fast, and I'm smaller than something that decays exponentially fast, so I have essentially exponential behavior, and I'm happy. That's essentially all there is to say about this question. And for the height function, I'm smaller than something which is bounded, so I'm bounded. So that settles fairly smoothly the case where beta is very small. Now I will be interested in the case beta is very large, and the question that I have is, does this decay polynomially fast, and does this grow logarithmically fast? Meaning that what could happen is here I'm smaller, so what I could have is, for any value of p which is strictly smaller than 1, if I sample my percolation configuration, I have exponential decay for the two x, y, and delay model for any value of beta, and I have here that this function remains bounded for any value of beta also. Okay. So now to investigate the case beta very large, I have to talk a tiny bit about percolation, because this is the law of my number disorder. And what do we know about percolation? We know that the model has a phase transition at PC is equal to 0.5 because I'm considering the bond percolation model in 2 dimensions, where if I sample a percolation configuration in 2 dimensions with P smaller than 0.5, I see only like finite isolated clusters. Here you have one of the small clusters. That's a good observation. And if I increase the value of P and I switch above 0.5, so here you have a simulation with 0.7, like you have lots of edges which starts to connect to each other and you start to have an infinite cluster, which is drawn here in blue. So, second observation, if you take P smaller than 1/2, then the critical probability in 2 dimensions, it's going to be also very easy, not very hard and not very interesting, to see that for any value of beta, your spin system valued in the circle have exponential decay, and your height functions are bounded. So, like the pictures that you see are this one. So for the x, y, and delay model, you see spins which are almost independent from each other. And for the height function, it's like a C of 0 with some isolated specs. So we have treated the case beta very small. We have treated the case P smaller than 1/2. I will not say anything about the case P equal 1/2, because I don't know much. But, so the only case that remains is the case P larger than 1/2, when there is an infinite cluster, and beta large. So that's where the theorem goes. If I consider the XY and the Villain model, so we did the XY model with Christophe Guingamp last year, and the Villain model is the subject of an ongoing work. And I look at this function, so take A extremely large, you can even send A, capital L to infinity. Then, the expectation of your 2-point function is going to decay polynomially fast when beta is very large, and exponentially fast when beta is very small. And so the interesting part of the statement is that the PKT transition survives when you incorporate some disorder to your model. And that's all for P equals 0.51. Like you just have to be super critical. Second result, for my 2 height functions, if I consider the variance of the height and I take the expectation with respect to P, when beta is very small, we said earlier, it's easy to show that the variance remains bounded. But when beta is large, you have your variance starts to grow logarithmically. So it means that both the phase transitions, so this one, the KT phase transition, where the spin tends to like align, although the correlation decays polynomially fast, and the roughening phase transition, where your height function starts to look like a real GFF, they survive if we put them on, if we incorporate this type of disorder, and if the probability of an edge to be open is supercritical, so you have an infinite cluster. Okay, so how do you prove? How can we try to show this result? So the interesting cases are this one and this one. So the proof goes in 2 steps. So first, I should mention, like the first step would be to try the known proof with P equal 1 for the model without disorder, and try to adapt them by incorporating the disorder and see if the proof resists to the addition of the disorder. And this, as far as today, I don't know how to do it. But if someone knows how to like put these 2 models on a percolation cluster and show that the KT transition and the localization, delocalization phase transition survives just by like investigating one of the known proofs, I would be very interested. So that doesn't work, so we are going to proceed differently. And so the proof will go in 2 steps. The first step will prove the result when P is equal to 1 minus epsilon for a tiny value of epsilon. So here, I think the simulation shows something like, we're going to prove the result for P is equal to 0.998, something like that. So you have a simulation of your cluster when P is equal to 0.998, you remove just like a few edges here and there, very rarely, and you try to show like, okay, do I have my result for this type of environment? And already that is not completely easy if you want to adapt the known proofs. And then, step 2, you say, if you can do it for p is equal to 0.998, then you can do it for any p larger than 1. And the way to go from there to there, it uses renormalization arguments, which are fairly common in probability, and in like supercritical percolation. And I will not mention too much about that. It's mostly technical. What is interesting is to see how can I get the result for p for a p smaller than 1, strictly smaller than 1. So what do I do? So there is an idea which goes back to Wells in the 70s, and I will first tell you the results, then like explain a nice story about it. So what I do is I fix L, the size of my box, so very large integers, and I consider a percolation configuration. And I just rewrote the definition of my X1 model, so you have the exponential of beta, the sum over all the nearest neighbor, omega xy plus theta x minus theta y, and here you put your product measure. And what I will be interested in, I said a word earlier about it, is the partition function here. So the normalizing constant that makes this measure a probability measure. So like this guy. And this guy depends on all the parameters which are in the subscript, so they depend on L, beta, and more importantly, they depend on omega, like the value of my percolation configuration. And then, like the smart idea is to introduce a percolation measure, so a probability on this space, on 0.1 on the functions defined on the edges of my box on the values in 0, 1, which is not at all the IID measure, but which is a reasonable measure, which is defined in terms of this partition function. So I will define it like that. The probability to sample omega, where omega is my functions going from my box, from the edges of my box to 0, 1. It's the partition function of the XY model with this very specific omega, divided by whatever I need to divide to make this measure a probability measure. So you sum over all the configurations omega, so you have 2 to the number of edges in your box of them, of the partition function, L beta omega. Okay, that's a measure. It's not like easy to know what it looks like if I sample according to this measure. Like you may ask a very reasonable question. What does it like? Okay, so take L very large, give me a beta. Give me what does a percolation configuration look like when you sample according to this measure? We can say a few things, but not so much. It's very correlated. It can be problematic. But we can still say a few things. And one of the nice things is that it is defined in terms of the XY model. And what Wells observed in 1977 is that actually for this measure kappa, it's going to interact like very well with the XY model. And I can prove an inequality of this nature if I take the cosine of my two angles at 0 and at L1, I average over L beta and omega. And I take the expectation with respect to this complicated measure, even though I don't really know what configuration omega sampled according to this kappa look like. I have an inequality. It's larger than the same observable, so the cosine of the difference between the two angles, without the disorder, but you have to pay a bit of a price, and the price that you pay is that you put a beta over T. You increase a bit the temperature of this model. And that's very nice, because now what you can do is say, well, for this model, like the one on the right, without the disorder, we have the results. So we know that if beta is very large, larger than like 2 times the critical threshold for the BKT transition, the term on the right-hand side decays polynomially fast. And if the term on the right-hand side decays on the polynomially fast, like 1 over L to some power, this one on the left cannot decay exponentially fast. And so already, like, you get something out of it. The proof of this inequality, it's not like very difficult or very long, like you can do it in 2 or 3 pages. And it is an inequality, it's an extension of the Gini inequality that I mentioned earlier, which is the one which allows to tell you that like this function is increasing in beta and in omega. And it was proved by a PhD student, Wells, in 1977, so at the time where there was not internet. And so he quit academia. And so for a long time, this inequality was only in his thesis in a bookshelf in an university in Indiana. And then it was mentioned in a few papers. So sometimes when you go to the paper of statistical physics in the 80s, you can see a mention, like you can see someone mentioning this inequality. It happened to me 2 or 3 times. But it was widely unknown. And Barry Simon was interested in a problem not so long ago, maybe more like less than 5 years ago. And actually, like he found out that this inequality, this wealth inequality, was sufficient for him to solve this problem. And so then he tried to investigate like who was Wells because he was unknown, and he found him. And they had a Zoom meeting, and he's telling all the stories. So if you want to, one afternoon you want to take a break without really, but still like consider it working, you can read like the story of the tale of 3 authors of Barry Simon, where he tells the story of this inequality. So you learn a lot. And he gives his opinion on negative yarn, so it's interesting. Okay, so now, so you may say, okay, that's nice, but this measure kappa, it's quite complicated, we don't know so much about it, so can I say something interesting about my original problem, which was studying the model with an IIT measure of probability P. And as it happens, so once you have this inequality, actually it's a smart observation of Christophe Garban from a few years ago. So you have the wealth inequality, and I said that you cannot say too many things about this measure kappa, but there is some things that you can check. And some things that you can check is that you can find a probability P which is 1 minus epsilon, so this 0.998, so that the IID probability measure of probability P, so my Bernoulli percolation with probability 0.998, stochastically dominates the measure kappa. You have, there are general criteria to check stochastic domination for probability measures, and like this measure kappa just satisfies one of the general criteria, so you can just apply it. The probability P is not very large, but the conclusion of all this story is that you can find a coupling between your IID measure with a probability P which is not 1, like strictly smaller than 1 but not 1, so such that if you sample according to these 2 measures, so it's a coupling between the 2, then the omega of xy of this one will always be larger than the omega of xy of this one for any pair of like ranges. And then you're in business, because these functions, like these 2-point functions, I said that they are increasing in the disorder omega. And so if you have a stochastic domination, you can just say, okay, it's an increasing function. This measure is stochastically dominated by this one. Conclusion, like the expectation with probability P of the 2-point function is larger than the expectation under this measure kappa of the 2-point function. And then you say, but this one is the same as this one. So you can just change the inequalities, and you deduce that if you take beta sufficiently large, the expectation of the cosine here with a disorder decays polynomially fast, and so this one decays polynomially fast. So that's nice. That solves the problem for the XY model. So this one is almost under control. What would be interesting would be to try to get a result which is not annealed but quenched, like with high probability over omega, trying to get something reasonable in this direction. And so now, once you've done this, the first XY model, you may say, okay, but in the literature we know that there are like many related models, in particular like these 3, the Villain model, where the coefficients decay, like the Fourier coefficients decays like a Gaussian, and the integer value Gaussian free field, and the XY height function. Can I show the same result? And the answer is, so what I will do is explain how to do it for this one. And this one, I will leave it open. You need an additional idea, which I will not mention. So what you may want to do is to go there. So you know that there is a duality between the XY model and the XY height function. So you're going to exploit, to use the duality. So what I'm going to do is going to do the same process, and that's a new result which is currently, which we are currently writing. So I define same process. I define my xy height function with the value of my disorder omega, and I look at the partition function, and I will do exactly the same thing. I will define a measure which I called kappa tilde, which is a measure on percolation configurations, which is defined exactly in the same way. So the probability to sample according to kappa tilde, it's the partition function not of the xy model, but of the xy model. So like this partition function here, divided by whatever I need to divide by to make it a probability measure. So I will sum over all the omega tilde, all the configuration of this one.
But are those partition functions the same?
No, not necessarily.
For the-
Yes and no, because I don't have the same boundary condition. So I would say
So if you have the same, you don't have the same bound. I mean,
you don't have exact identity between like this one and the one from before. You don't have exact
because
identity.
you're using different boundary conditions for the.
Yes. Yes, and I will say a bit of a word about it just in a second. But it's true that I will say a word about it in a second. So like as written, we have different boundary conditions, so not exactly the same. But you have the same Wells inequality for the xy height function. So this time, you take the expectation with respect to your measure kappa tilde. Once again, it's not easy to see what happens when you sample according to kappa tilde, but it's going to like interact well with the xy model, and you get that it's larger than the variance of your xy model without disorder, and the price that you pay is that you have to put a beta over 2. And then you say, okay, well, if I take beta sufficiently large, I know from my result of Pitt, Martin, and Diedrich, and Fröhlich and Spencer that this grows like a logarithm, and so I know. How do you prove that? And so that's where I will make a comment. So you can use, so we will use like two inputs. The first one is the Wells inequality for the xy model. And the second one is the duality between the xy height function and the xy model, which was explored. So I said it like roughly, there is a duality. If you want to go into the details of like how does this duality work exactly, how do I make a precise statement out of it, it's not so easy. But it was explored in a nice paper by Diedrich van Engelenburg and Martin Liss like 2 years ago, where they like stated like they explored quite in details this inequality, and we can make use of the results that they had to say that this inequality for height functions, we can rewrite it as an inequality for not exactly this xy model, but a variant of the xy model. And then we can prove the Wells inequality for the variant of the xy model introduced by Diedrich and March. Well, I have 5 minutes early, and I think I will stop here. And so what I didn't say is how we do it for these two models. I'm happy to discuss it if you're interested. Thank you for your attention.